Hey guys, welcome back to another Turning 101 video. Today we're going to be talking about a very fun topic, and that is the topic of picking your wood. Now, the last video that I did on this series was about how to plank wood and how to process wood. And this does not change, all right? Planking is a completely different process from picking the wood you're going to turn. It doesn't ever change. However, what you're actually going to turn, that matters. And through experience, I'm not saying that I have a lot of it, but after doing some sketchy things that I shouldn't have done in my beginner years, I've learned what to do and what not to turn and what's safe and not safe to turn, which is a very important skill. So let's get to it. All right, so for the purpose of this video, I have these cherry logs. So this is Pennsylvania cherry. It's not black cherry. So these are little decorative cherries or little prune woods that people plant in their backyards here in Quebec. And they give these little cherries. They're not edible, but it gives this really nice wood. I have made a bowl recently with it. I posted on my Instagram. I'll leave a picture right here. So that's what this would give. So with that being in mind, I want to turn some more. However, some woods split more than others. That's very important to know. So just a little rundown. Maple is very stable. I found that maple basically never cracks. Ash really depends on temperature shifts. If you put an ash log, you put it outside in the cold for a couple of months, then take it inside very quickly, it will crack, just the temperature difference. Beech has a tendency to split a lot that I've found, but the main ones that split are fruit wood. Fruit wood is a very dense type of wood. If you've cut, like apple wood, not cherry, but apple, honey locust, pear, Osage orange, they're dense woods. And what happens with dense woods, and they're especially, the trunk is not very long. Like an apple tree, it's like the trunk is this and the rest are just branches. Branches hold a lot more tension than the actual trunk because they're leaning. And more tension there is in the tree, when you release the tension, it wants to split. And that's what happens with fruit woods, especially cherry. So when you're picking, so this is cut, as you can see, in slabs. The center slabs have been removed, like the other video said, and you should always do that way. But now I've let them dry a little bit, and now I have to see what I'm going to turn and what I'm not going to turn. And now this is where experience, which by the way I don't have much of, but experience that I have in turning sketchy things tells me what I should and maybe shouldn't turn. So I'm going to get into that with you guys. All right, so I'm going to start off with separate logs. So we'll start off with, I think, these two. So as you can see, I'll start with this one. This one has some splits. There's a split here, there's a split here, there's checking. That's okay, because as I've said before, for storing, you leave them longer, so it gives you room for splits to happen. Now this is going to be where the bowl is going to be made. You can see I have a split. I'll get my Sharpie out. You see we have a split that's going from there to there. We have a split from here to here. And those are kind of the major splits. Everything else is checked. And if I had to guess, I'd say they most likely finish around there. Which is good, because as I've said before, your diameter bowl, I'll get my little ruler out. This is basically a 13.5, maybe 13, we'll say 13.5 inch long, but it's only a 10.5 inch wide. So if I take that, that's 10.5 inches dead on straight. So that is what I can turn. That would be the maximum bowl I'd be able to make, because I left it long. That's what you always want to do. So it gives room for those checks to happen. So if you look on this side, again, a big split here, some little checks, nothing to be worried about too much, especially since the bowl is going to be turned out like this. If the bowl's being turned out like this, these are probably going to go out. Now, if we look here, we have a huge split there, and a huge split there. Now, how deep do these go? I am not sure. What I'd have to do is I'd have to cut the blank out first and then check, because they might not go that deep. We'll put a little thing in there. So they go about this deep. So that's not too bad. when you rough out a shape of a bowl, these are most likely to come out. So this, I would be comfortable, and these are not going to be once turned, they're going to be twice turned. I'd be comfortable cutting a blank out here and checking after I've cut the blank out. I'd be comfortable enough to rough turn this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a circle. I'm going to get a circle. I'm going to cut the blank out, and then I'm going to show you guys what actually the blank looks like. I think that it's not going to be as bad as it looks, and I'd still be prepared to rough turn this into a decent sized bowl. So let's get this on the bandsaw. So look at that. So we have these two big splits. If we look here, these splits finish there, there, and this little split finishes there. And as you can see, the checking, all these splits right there, these little checks, that would look pretty damaging. They actually look worse on this side. You can see there's one there, there, that big one. You can see they're all gone. There's none. You have a split that goes from there to there and there to there, right? So this would be safe to turn because you can see these splits don't go very deep in. And this is another trick. The split will always be deeper on the end grain. So you can see this is the end grain. So I'll just write that down. End grain. And this is the long grain. You can see that the split is deep here. The split will always be deeper on the end grain. There's a reason why the splits go from this way and not this way, because they don't split along the long grain. So there's no splits here. So as the split leaves the end grain, it's going to get shallower and shallower and shallower, generally. Sometimes it's different, but that's as a biologist, as well as because I also have a bachelor's and a master's degree in biology. There's so many variables, and everything biology is basically, this is the norm except for this thing. So there are exceptions, but generally the crack will always be wider and more dangerous towards the end grain. So I know that if it's this deep here, it's not as deep over here. So those splits are not as dangerous as they look. So this is safe to turn. Now, so that's the first blank. Now if we go to another example where this is not safe to turn. Now, we can see here we have some checking, very obvious. We have a giant split here along the end grain, but the one that's really stressing me out is this one right here. These are called radial splits, and it's when the fibers of the wood literally, they don't split in half, they just unstick from each other, ils décollent. And that is what will kill you, because this is what's going to shoot out of the bowl when you start spinning it. So these are very, very dangerous, and you need to recognize these as fast as you can. These are the ones you want to look for. But again, we have these little checking marks that I don't think are going to be that problematic, but this one I don't know how far it goes in. I've had pieces of cherry about 16 inches long have these radial splits, and I'm able to hammer, like just by giving it a knock with a hammer and a chisel, knock out the center of the log. Just because there's so much delamination and there's so little holding it that this is very dangerous once it's under. It's not that dangerous when you're cutting and you're doing anything and you're cutting with a chainsaw or anything, but as soon as you get it spinning on a lathe and the force is, it wants to drive this out. And when this blows out of your bowl, it can go anywhere. When a bowl is spinning really fast and you have a catch, it can go this way, or at most it goes upwards. When a thing like this flies off, you have no clue where it's going. It can go that way, it can go this way, it can come towards you. So these you really have to be careful. So if you see this, spot it immediately. If we turn this around, you can see we have some basic traditional checking, nothing too bad. But now, if I look here, this massive split on the end grain is quite deep. It goes basically, I'd say, about two-thirds of the way down, which means that here it's not like the other one that was just up to here, so maybe down here it's just a few millimeters in. This is probably quite deep in the bowl that it's still split. But these checking marks, I'm not too worried. So this split goes all the way from here, and that split goes all the way from here, and that's another thing you have to look out for. If these splits are connected like that, that means that this is at risk of splitting in half. Now, there's two ways you can go about this. You could either say, well, you know what, I'm really worried about my safety, which is a great concern. I'm just going to split along here, and I'm going to have two beautiful slabs to do some nice spindle work. I'll take my little normal natural 2 inches off each side, because you want to get rid of that checking, and you'll make sure, and you'll be definitely sure that this split is not going to split in half on the lathe, which is what you want to do. You do not want this to split in half. I've had bowls split in half, and it is scary as hell. Like, it's not too bad when it's a bowl about this size, but when it's a 12-inch bowl or a 12-inch platter that just blows up, it's not fun. So if you can avoid these, it's very good. And even if I do split this long in half, some people will say, well, that's really wasteful. That's really disappointing. You could have gotten a beautiful bowl out of this. Well, if you look at this, those are still pretty decent sized spindle chunks. Like, you can get a really nice vase. You can get a vase out of that. You can get a beautiful handle. You can get a beautiful, I don't know, I'm not a very big spindle turner, but you can get a bunch of nice stuff out of these, right? So I don't know why people would just dismiss this and only go for bowls. I'd rather be safe, split this down the middle, and have two big spindle chunks instead of cutting it into a round, having a bowl, then having to fill this with epoxy. Because you can just say, Matthew, I really want to make a bowl, cut the blank out, fill the thing with epoxy, and be okay with it. That's also fine. But I think it's safer to just cut this through and just have two nice spindle blanks. So I'm going to go do that. I'm going to show you guys what the result is. Alright, so this was cut on the bandsaw. So you can see here we have that radial split, that giant split, and these checks. So the checks are still there, but you can see they're quite not as prominent. But this radial split, you can see it still runs from there to there, and you can see the split still goes a third of the way down. And on this side, not as bad. You see you have a few checks here, this one goes down to there, and that one just goes down to there. If this was like this on both sides, fine, bowl blank right away. But because of this massive split that's still, even after taking about 1.5 inches, well, basically almost 1.5 inches off of the side, is still that prominent, this goes halfway through. So what we're going to do, and because of this split here is still present. So I still think the safest method would be to cut like that, and like that, and get two giant spindle blanks to do whatever. So that's what I'm going to cut on the bandsaw. So we can see two nice, these can be end grain boxes actually, but you can see these checks, they go quite deep within the bowl, and this split, you know, you can still see sections of it here, but these are clean, right? Even I could cut a little bit off the edge here, and this would be a perfectly clean block of wood. So by doing this, you get nice end grain bowl, end grain box blanks, and they're perfectly clean with no pith, so even less chances of them cracking. So that's another way of doing risky wood. Now, here we have another blank. So we have some splits, nothing too major, and actually no splits like this, and no splits on the backside. So this is perfect. So this is going to become a full diameter bowl because, well, we have the wood for it. We have the wood. We have no problems with it. We're still going to do it quite in the center because even if there's a little bit of checking, we're still going to get rid of that. But this is what you kind of hope for. But as you can see, even if you process the wood correctly, you can still have problems with it. It doesn't matter. Some woods will just split, which is why I always recommend getting wood in bulk, because if I only had one of these, let's just pretend I only collected one log like this, and I only had one slab, and it was this one. Well, then my plan of making a bunch of bowls, like the one I showed in the video, goes from a good plan to zip. But because I have multiple pieces, I'm pretty much safe, and if I have to, I'd rather go the safe route because I have more than trying to risk it because I only have one. So that's one of my mottos and mentalities. So I'm going to cut this up. So right there, open this up. As you can see, so just break that in half. That goes into the firewood bin. And as we can see, we have a little check here, but that's really not too bad because it will turn out. And we have some checks here that will definitely turn out. So, beautiful. Now, last but not least, we have another one that has a big split on the back side of it. So if I stick that in, that's going in that much. And that is going in that much, about almost halfway through the log. So this is definitely not safe to turn into a bowl blank. But on this side it's not too bad, but you can see that this split kind of connects with that split. So if I was to smack, I'm like dead sure that if I was to smack this with an axe, this would split in half right there and that would break off. So this is another prime candidate for this kind of thing. So I'm going to skip over this and I'm going to go on to a different topic, but the same principle, cut that in half and make 2 spindle blanks. Now, another example of risky wood would be this blank right here. So as you can see, this is a piece of apple wood. This, I tried to fix it, but as you can see at this point, there's checks all over this blank. It's split basically in half. There's checks all over here. It's split both ways. It's split along this edge and this edge. This is still solid. But this is something that I would not turn. I'd rather cut it up into a different type of blank than just say, oh, well, I only have one apple blank. I really want to make a bowl. I'm going to put this on the lathe. There are so many risk factors by turning this. Like, these checks are probably quite small, so they probably turn out. But I don't know how deep this crack goes. I don't know if this CA filled the crack correctly. I don't know if I'll even get a nice shape out of it because one side is so angled compared to the other one. I don't know if this crack and these cracks are going to hold. This is the kind of thing that I wanted to do this video for. Is in the past, as a beginner, wanting to make bowls, as many bowls as I can, because I really wanted to practice and I didn't have that much wood, I would have turned this. I would have said, doesn't matter, I filled the crack as much as I could, I'm going to turn it. Now that I'm a little bit more experienced, I have more wood, I've done many bowls under my belt, this is a no-go. This is something that I wouldn't even touch. I'm not going to. I'm not going to make a bowl out of this. One, there's these risk factors in there. Yes, you've put CA glue in there, but CA glue versus epoxy. Like if I was to vacuum seal this with epoxy, then I'd be a little bit more confident. But this is just CA glue. CA glue can fix small splits. Like if I had just a small split here that goes from like there to there, then yeah, you can use CA. But for a split that goes all the way across, you know, it's risky. Not only that, if these checks go too deep, I'd have to fill them up with glue, and that will take more time. It's gonna be a little bit more risky. If I want to go as thin as I really want, it might blow up. So this is the kind of bowl or blank that you might say, well, Matthew, you're kind of being a drama queen a little bit here. You're kind of being a little bit too cautious. That might be so. And if you are comfortable turning this, again, you're braver than me. And that's a compliment to you guys. And maybe I'm just overreacting, but I'd rather just not turn it, be safe, and just set it aside. There's other types of bowls that you have to watch out for as well, and this is one of them. I think I've mentioned it in the previous video, but I'm going to mention it here. This is a roughed out piece of ash. It's beautiful grain, right? It's beautiful grain. Once this is polished, it would be beautiful. But as you can see, there's a split that goes from there, here, and if you look on the inside, it has wax on it. That's why you can't really see. The split is here, goes across the rim of the bowl, and a little bit in here. So in my view, this split is a delamination from there all the way to over here. It's just there's some sections of wood that haven't split yet, because here it's split, but here it's not. So at the moment, this is still solid. Like that's solid. That's not breaking apart. But when I make bowls, I try to aim for a maximum diameter of a quarter of, like a half an inch. And for small bowls, I try to go even shorter. So this, once it's returned and put round, that's probably the outside diameter. I bring the inside diameter to about here, right? And I don't know if that split goes deep enough, because yes, at the moment, even if the split goes up to here, and you can see there's even this nice figure there, that's really just a shame. If that split goes like from here and goes all the way up to here, and I turn that out and boom, the bowl is clean. I don't know that. The split might go all the way up to here. And once I don't have this holding wood, all this wood here and here that holds everything together, I just have this split that goes through the rim of the bowl, and the bowl blows up. And this is a split that it's not narrow, but it's so close together. It's like the radial splits. It's just a little delamination. The wood fibers aren't touching each other, but they're not just split open. I can't get glue in there. I can't get epoxy. I could maybe try and vacuum seal it, but I can't get glue in there to just solidify the whole thing. So this, unfortunately, I'm just not going to turn it. I'd rather just keep it as a roughed out bowl that I put my beeswax and linseed oil rags in, and that's it. It goes right there, and I have less chances of blowing my face up. So that's the kind of thing that you have to think about when you're doing this kind of stuff. Are for spindle blanks. As you can see, this is a piece of oak. There's a split that goes from here to here to here to there. Now, if I was to take an axe, put it right there and hit it, it would break open. Now you might say, well, this is not good to turn. Well, that depends. If I put this in the chuck right here, and I turn from like there to there, that split's not in the way. And this is all clear timber. If we look on this side, there's nothing here. There's no splits, there's no nothing. I don't know what this is. My grandfather gave me this. I think something was stamped or hammered in there. I don't know. So basically the danger zone, there's probably a Top Gun reference in there somewhere, is here to there. It's all this. So if I was to make a scoop and I was to go in that way, that would be very stupid because that's going to just blow out. Not only that, it's different for spindle blanks than bowls. Because if I have that split and I put this in the chuck like this, and I clamp the chuck down, well, that split is actually being compressed together by the actual chuck. So there's less chances of it blowing up because I'm actually closing the split. I'm actually compressing the split together and holding it. And because the splits only go up to here, basically where the chuck is, which is kind of like just really good luck of the draw, all of this is still safe to turn. It's still safe to make something out of this. Over here, not so much. And you don't want to bore through completely because then you'd release a little bit more of that pressure. So you can play around with that as well. So spindle blanks, if you have a spindle blank that you're kind of really wanting to turn, but you looked at it and there's some, oh crap, I put my cap in the wrong way. Oh, that was stupid of me. Anyway, if you're just thinking, okay, if you have a split or a little check or whatever, put that in the chuck, close it up, and do the other side. That's how you can get away with it. But you don't want to turn it the split this way. So that's another trick that you can get to just help save a little bit more wood. All right, so I'm currently in my wood storage area, and it's also important to think about your bowl blanks, your rough turn bowls. So this is a bowl made out of butternut. As you can see, there's no splits in it. The pith has been removed. It's warped a little bit. It's still thick enough that I have enough material to turn. There's no radial splits. This is a safe bowl to turn, right? So this is what you're looking for when you're drying. This is a successful dried bowl. This drying process was successful. Now, you do have variations when it comes to your drying process. Some may split. For example, this is a hickory bowl that I turned in a video that is going to come out pretty soon. As you can see, there's some splits. Some splits here, here, here. There's some little checking on the inside. I don't know if you guys can see that, but there's a little checking on the outside, and there's some more splits. And there's these big splits that have actually closed up as it's dried and moved. So this, you say it's split, but as you can see, the splits are quite manageable. You can get CA epoxy in there without a problem, and it will hold the bowl together with no stress. There's no structural integrity loss. Even if you really didn't want to deal with the splits, you can actually turn this down to about here, like turn the bowl down to here, and you'd be fine. I don't want to do that. I'd rather save a big, nice bowl like this, so I'm going to fill those splits up. But this is still a manageable, safe bowl to turn. There's more wood holding the thing together than there is splits. Hence, these splits are not dangerous. But not all bowls are... There's no room. Ugh, I have too many bowls. That's not the case for all of them. For example, this one. This is a piece of apple wood. First things first is you can see there's a split here that goes all the way down to here. You can actually even see it on the inside. You can see light through it. And it's the same on this side. Not only that, you can see this punkiness. You can see how the wood is torn out. That is because this is not, how do I put this? This is starting to decompose. This is starting to rot. Apple wood has a tendency to do that. It rots from the trunk up. And this is at risk of blowing up. I wouldn't say it's that at risk, but it's something to look out for. But if we go down this pile, this probably was turned all at the same time. You see this one's not too bad. This one is passable. This one is the money bowl. So you can see this one is very punky, a little bit everywhere. The only clear wood we have is here. It's very spalted. You can see the wood is starting to, it's starting to peel out. This is something that is at risk of blowing up. I've had, actually, I remember this because while I was turning this batch a couple of months ago, I think this was in the summer, 1 or 2 of them blew up on me. Like really just split in half. Because the wood is so rotten and decomposed. Not that it's rotten, but in the sense that it's in that process, it just doesn't hold together under extreme rotation. So you really have to be careful. Like, even if I just do this, I can hear it start to split. So this is not a bowl that I would consider safe. And if I do turn it, I will be very aware of how this bowl is turning. But that doesn't mean that any checks or cracks in your bowl blanks is necessarily a bad thing. So if I take another blank, let me just see if I take this is a piece of honey locust. Oh, this one didn't split. I remember there was a few that had split. Guess it wasn't all of them. As you can see, this piece of honey locust, it split here. The pith is still in, and it split a little bit at the pith, but it's still integral. And that's another thing you have to think of. When bowls dry, they move, right? So that hickory bowl I showed you, actually, this hickory bowl, I dried this in the microwave. And as you can see, there was these splits that went from here all the way down. But as it turned into a football, the splits closed back up on themselves. So a bowl might look horrible, but just give it time. And the splits will reclose and the bowl and the wood will tighten up again. So that's another thing you have to look out for. But most of the times the splits are manageable. But you really have to check your bowl blanks before you do anything. Because if you don't, and you put them on the lathe and they start spinning really fast, you can have problems. For example, this one, you can see a radial split. Now, I can see a little delamination on the inside, so this one probably am not going to return. Or I'm going to be very, I even have a big delamination on this side. So basically the split goes from here, goes up, and then it goes back down. So that whole section is compromised. I wouldn't return this. It's probably just going to stay like that. And if I do return it, it's going to stay a very, very thick bowl, which is unfortunate, but it's safer to do it that way. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about in this video. It's not a very dynamic video, obviously. It's not a very turning, I'm not really turning anything. But it's fun to just know and to kind of give you an idea of what to look for. Because sometimes they kind of take you by surprise. Actually, if I just turn this around, you can see this split. So there's a knot here. There's a split that goes from there to there. And another split that goes from there to there. These splits can't be filled. So when you take your bowl and you make your bowl, you have to take this in consideration. Do I turn the bowl this way or do I turn the bowl this way? If I turn it this way, there's more chances of this coming out. Well, as if I turn it this way, this is going to be next to the rim, the spot where it's going to be thinnest. So that's going to be a little bit of a danger zone. But if you look on this bowl, you can see there's a check here. That's not too bad. Look at the material. I think this is like 7 inches by, I think maybe 11 or 10. Like, that is not a problem. Like, even if it's split, that is not problematic. Same thing goes for this one. There's some checks, but this is such a big bowl blank that these are really a problem. So it's very important to check your wood before you turn. I know I've done it. I have done it when I started, to just have that drive to want to turn everything into the maximum diameter bowl you can. But it's important not to trust that feeling. It's really important to get the splits out, or to deal with them before you go onto the lathe. So if you know there's a blank that has a split in it, whether it's small or it's in a compromising position. For example, I did it on this bowl right here. There's a little check. It's not very deep. It goes a little bit in. But you know what? I'll just CA it. The CA will give it strength. It's probably going to turn out anyways, but the CA is just going to hold it together as I'm turning. But if you don't take that into consideration and you just put anything onto the lathe, what's going to happen is one day you're not going to see a split, you're not going to take, and you're just not going to know, and something bad's going to happen. So it's important to deal with your splits beforehand. Richard Raffin does it. Tomislav does it as well. And they remove all the defects first, and then you figure out what you're doing with your piece. But by doing it the way I like to do it, the way I do it is I like to do that before I go on the lathe. So when I'm going onto the lathe, I know already what I'm going to make. So for bowls, I'd rather take the blank completely, check and crack free, and then I know exactly what I'm doing. But sometimes you can't predict that. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. Hope you enjoyed this short little video. And leave a comment. Really, I do these videos where I talk a lot and I kind of give more information than actually doing stuff. Please let me know if you enjoy it. If you're telling me, "No, Matthew, this is really boring. We don't want to watch this. We want to see you turn, or we want to see you chop up wood. We want to see you doing stuff." Let me know, and I will maybe try and do less of these videos. Or when I do this information, I'll try to do it in a more dynamic way and try to piece everything up together. So please let me know. Comment. And like, subscribe, whatever. As always, happy turning, and we'll see you next time.